Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan McGuire, Director of Professional Development at ACCE, and I'm happy to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. Today, we'll hear from Ehrlich, Director of Operations, Political Affairs, and Federation Relations at the U.S. Chamber, and from 3 Chamber professionals who have gone through the U.S. Chamber Accreditation program with their chambers. Bill McCoy, President and CEO of the Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce, Desiree Benioff, President and CEO of the Edwardsville Glen Carbon Chamber of Commerce, and Gary Mabry, CCE, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce serving Johnson City, Jonesboro, and Washington County, Tennessee. Ali will start off the program by providing an overview of the accreditation program and the application process, and Desiree, Bill, and Gary will talk about how they prepared for the process and achieve this mark of continuing chamber excellence. Before I turn the program over to our panelists, I do have a few housekeeping notes. First, attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. Second, after the presentation, we'll have time for questions, which you can ask by using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question, and Ali will read the question out to the panel and to all of you, and the panel will answer it. If we run out of time and we don't get to your question, or if you have a question that you would prefer to discuss with Ali individually offline, please feel free to contact her or the other panelists directly. Contact information will be included in the presentation. I'm also happy to get in touch with you afterwards after the webinar. And third, the webinar is being recorded, and it will be up on the ACC website on the ACC University webinar page no later than Monday, March 4th. Also, the webinar presentation slides are uploaded to the webinar panel on the right-hand side of your computer screen. Just click on the presentation to download it. If you can't download it for any reason, it's just not working for you, or you prefer to just watch and listen, that's totally okay. I will also post the presentation slides along with the webinar recording. So with that, I would like to introduce our speakers. Ehrlich is Director of Operations in the Political Affairs and Federation Relations Division at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Is responsible for the Chamber's accreditation program, as well as program development for the Association Committee of 100 and the Chamber of Commerce Committee of 100. She manages both Chamber and Association memberships to the U.S. Chamber. Before joining the Chamber, Ali was a legislative assistant on Capitol Hill, focusing on healthcare, energy policy, appropriations, and economic development. Ali is a 2015 graduate of the Institute for Organization Management and received her Certified Association Executive Credential in 2017. She received a BA in International Affairs from the Elliott School of International Affairs at the George Washington University in 2002. Bill McCoy is President and CEO of the Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce in Texas, and Bill has spent a total of 44 years in the chamber field. He's a graduate of the Institute for Organization Management and previously served with chambers in Jasper, Garland, and Pasadena, all in Texas. He's steered 2 chambers through the accreditation process. Pasadena was accredited, and Port Arthur is a 5-star accredited chamber, so welcome, Bill. Desiree Benioff is in her 10th year of chamber leadership. She's President and CEO of the Edwardsville Glen Carbon Chamber of Commerce in Illinois. Desiree's past board chair for the Illinois Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. She's active with ACCE and has served on the Illinois Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors since 2015. She graduated from the Institute for Organization Management and has served as a class advisor. She was recently appointed to Institute's Curriculum Committee and the Midwest IOM Board of Regents. Desiree holds a master's degree in Applied Communication Studies from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and is studying to earn her Certified Association Executive Credential through ASAE. Welcome, Desiree. And then finally, Gary Mabry, President and CEO of the Johnson City, Jonesboro, and Washington County Chamber of Commerce, is in his 31st year of service with the Chamber, a 5-star accredited chamber. Gary's a member of the U.S. Chamber Board of Directors and currently serves on its accreditation board, the National Security Task Force, the Chamber of Commerce of 100, and Small Business Council. He graduated from the Institute of Organization Management and has served as an institute instructor and class advisor. Gary's a certified chamber executive, a past member of the ACCE Board of Directors, past president of the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce Executives, and a member of the State Chamber of Commerce. Gary's a graduate of East Tennessee State University. The college presents the Gary Mabry Community Service Award to a senior who exemplifies his community and volunteer service. And in 2015, the ETSU National Alumni Association selected Gary as its outstanding alumnus. So welcome, Allie, Bill, Desiree, and Gary to the webinar. Thank you so much for presenting. And at this point, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Allie.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that kind introduction. And I'd like to start by thanking all of you for joining the webinar today. And again, extend an especially warm thank you to our volunteer speakers who, by my math, between the three of them, we have about 85 years of chamber management expertise on the phone, and we're very fortunate to benefit from their thoughts and advice this afternoon. So again, excuse me, thank you everyone for joining, and especially to the volunteers today. During the course of this webinar, I plan to address questions like, what is accreditation? What is the accreditation application process? What are the benefits of being accredited? How do I start? Myself, as well as the volunteers, will take questions at the end of the webinar, as Susan said. But if you think of something that you want answered during the course of the webinar, again, please feel free to enter it to that Q&A box on the right-hand side, and I'll try to either get to it during the course of my presentation or address it in the Q&A section. Now, whether you've heard of accreditation only recently, maybe a neighboring chamber has just gone through the process, or you're a new executive at a currently accredited chamber, I hope this presentation gives you a better understanding for the U.S. Chamber's accreditation program overall. So let's begin by answering the most commonly asked question I get: what is accreditation? Accreditation is a designation given to chambers of commerce by the board of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The program recognizes chambers for not only meeting, but for exceeding industry standards, and it's something to be very proud of. To give you just a little background about the program, it was created a little over 50 years ago at the request of both local chambers and ACCE. Chamber professionals really wanted to develop a national set of standards that assessed and benchmarked chamber objectives and resources and performances and procedures. And so this program was born. So now that you know what accreditation is, let's talk about how you get it. The application is the backbone of the accreditation process. There are 9 sections of the application, and they cover all aspects of a chamber's operation. Each section contains minimum requirements that must be met for accreditation, and then additional criteria, and that's used to determine an accredited chamber star designation. The application and its benchmarks are updated regularly to ensure that it meets industry standards and matches chamber practices. To do this, we evaluate findings in the ACC Operations Survey, we consider input from our volunteer board, and we evaluate application trends. To get started, I recommend that you visit the accreditation website and take our self-analysis survey. And here's where you're going to find those minimum requirements that I spoke about just a moment ago. This is a checklist, and it's going to give you an idea for whether or not your chamber is ready to begin the process. It'll show you the kinds of items you need to develop. It gets your team thinking about the materials you need to gather for submission, and it really kind of gets your house in order. Next, we ask you to complete and submit an intent to apply form. This is just a simple web form, and it lets me know your timeline. We accept applications 3 times a year: March 31st, August 31st, and December 31st. And you'll be asked to identify your estimated submission date. Now, if timelines change, and they often do, please know that you can always change the submission. Just resubmit the form. Once that's taken care of, you're free to download the digital application. The 9 PDFs are on the accreditation program's website for download at any time. As you complete the application, please feel free to use the samples posted on the best practices page of the website for reference. This includes examples of actual chamber documents, and it can be really helpful when developing or updating policy manuals or project objectives. Of course, you can call the accreditation staff at any time throughout the process. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation. Once you've answered all the questions and the essays and saved your 9 completed sections to either a flash drive or a CD, you then send that plus the signature and conclusion page to me at the chamber, at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. As I said earlier, we accept applications 3 times each year, and it typically takes about 3 months to process an application. So for example, chambers that submit at the March 31st deadline will hear back in early June about their status. As you can see, the application fees are $6.99 for U.S. Chamber members and then $11.99 for non-members. And I'd like to make a quick note here for those of you who either attend Institute or have staff that attend, there's always an application fee voucher auctioned at each Institute site. In 2018, the average price for those vouchers came to just under $400. So as you can see, this is a really great value to chambers who plan to apply in the coming year. So if you or your staff attend Institute or ACCE or WACE's annual meetings, I encourage you to keep an eye out for it. Back to the process. Once you submit and all the minimums are determined to have been met, an experienced third-party consultant will assess the application based on the standards established by the Accreditation Board. Now, this board is comprised of CEOs of accredited chambers from across the country, as well as board members of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The accrediting board will review the applications and the recommendations of the consultant before it votes to approve a chamber's accreditation designation. If you've met all the minimum requirements, you'll be accredited. If you've met all the minimum requirements and then 70 to 79% of additional criteria, you'll be accredited with 3 stars. 80 to 89% of additional criteria, you're accredited with 4 stars. And then if you've met all the minimum requirements, as well as 90 to 100% of additional criteria, your chamber will be accredited with 5 stars. There's a similar process for state chambers, and those designations are Accredited State Chamber and Accredited State Chamber with Distinction. After the accrediting board meeting, applicants are notified of their new status. You receive a call and an email from me, as well as a package, which includes a congratulatory letter from Chamber President and CEO Tom Donahue, a plaque to display in your chamber, and sample marketing documents and logos for your website and your letterhead. And then what chambers find most useful is a list of recommendations outlining where chambers can improve over the next 5 years. Many chambers use this feedback as a roadmap for creating their strategic plans and setting long and short-term goals. If any participants today are chambers that are currently accredited and are beginning the re-accreditation process, I'm happy to send you this document if you can't locate it in your own records. So, who's accredited today? Out of the nearly 7,000 chambers across the nation, there's 208 accredited chambers. 204 of them are local chambers of commerce, meaning chambers at the city, regional, and county level. And then there's 4 chambers, state chambers, that are accredited as well. These numbers are actually about to change because we're going to add a number of newly accredited chambers after our March board meeting, and we look forward to congratulating those applicants. I know we have at least one person on the phone on the webinar today with a pending application. So, okay, I've spent a lot of time talking about the what and the how of the program, but now I'm sure you're asking why. Why do I go through all of this? First, I'll tell you why I think accreditation is a worthwhile idea, and then I'll let our fantastic volunteers give their perspectives. First, accreditation is a great tool. It provides a roadmap for building sound institutions and for helping chambers become strong advocates for the businesses in their communities. The accreditation process provides applicants with a top-to-bottom overview of their chamber's operations and programming. It also helps examine your policies and your documents and your procedures, as well as the use of your volunteers and your progress towards some of your goals. And last but certainly not least, it brings credibility to your chamber. It lets your members and your community know that you're a chamber that not only meets but exceeds industry standards. It tells them that their chamber adheres to sound financial practices, its programs are effective, its membership investment in your organization is money well spent. I can go on a lot longer about why I think the accreditation program is a worthwhile endeavor, but I found that chambers often get the most value out of hearing from others who've recently gone through the process themselves. As Susan introduced earlier, kindly joining us today are 3 chamber leaders who've steered their organizations through the accreditation process and are here to share their thoughts on why it was beneficial to their chamber's operations and management, as well as their members. Bill McCoy is the President and CEO of the 5-star accredited Greater Port Arthur Chamber. Desiree Benioff is the President and CEO of the Edwardsville Glen Carbon Chamber of Commerce. And Gary Mabry is the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce serving Johnson City, Jonesboro, Washington County. Washington Washington County. Desiree, I'm wondering if you would like to begin. I believe you wanted to share a bit about how your chamber decided to apply for the first time and what the process was like for your organization.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Allie. So we decided our deadline to submit was on December 31st. So let me start there, and I'll kind of work backward. Our decision to become accredited was really born during our strategic planning session. I guess it was about 4 years ago now. And the path to getting here has been winding. And our strategic planner, whenever we were discussing, where the organization should go, where we were at the time, which was not the best place, we discovered that we were just really not living up to industry best practices. And probably the most troubling aspect of that was that we had elected, we meaning the board, to not have an audit, to actually forego an audit, and that was actually part of our bylaws. And I was not pleased with that. Neither was our strategic planning or strategic planner, and several on our board really had some qualms about that. So, after talking about having an audit and again being told, no, we're not going to spend the money, we started looking at alternate ways of accomplishing that goal. And we came across accreditation. And I first heard about accreditation through my dear friend Joe Henning, the CEO with the Aurora, Illinois Chamber of Commerce. And I started talking to him about it and looking through the criteria. And I saw that an audit is a requirement, either every other year or every third year, depending on your budget, and with reviews in between. And so that sounded like a fantastic plan to me, and we got our board on board with accreditation as a culmination of the strategic plan. And so I'm very proud to say it took us a while to get to this point. Of course, it took us a little bit to get into an audit review cycle, but totally worth it. And, it's, I believe, as Ali explained, we're going to find out in March our accreditation status. And I know it's different for everyone, timeline-wise specifically. I participated in several of these webinars as an attendee for accreditation over the years, and you hear a lot of varied timeline information, anywhere from 6 months to a year, and we're probably a little bit different. It took us, like I mentioned, a couple of years to get here, and honestly, that's because the first time that I sat down and got cozy with the self-analysis, I felt pretty good. I printed it out, and I was going through and marking yes or no, yes or no. And then I got to the last line, and it said, if you answered no to any of those items, you're not ready to apply for accreditation. So that was a great reality check for me. And, so I started working on the accreditation packet probably about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3. And I started with the essays. That was an easy way for me to begin documenting where we were, where we still had to go. And I will note, we have a staff of 3, so we are small but mighty. And our board is not a working board. We're very much a policy level board, and we're not huge on committees. So much of this accreditation fell on my shoulders, the vast majority. So I would say, just kind of as a point of education and from my personal perspective, that's why it took us longer to get there. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't think that necessarily matters, but I do want people to know that it can take a varying amount of time depending on your resources and your workload and how you divvy up the work. So, like I said, very, very fantastic process, overwhelming, no doubt, totally worth it though. And really for us, accreditation is all about excellence. And once our board committed to this process, it became something that we talked about at every meeting that we had, at our annual meetings, that we are working toward this incredible goal and something that's really going to set us apart. There are, I believe, 8 accredited chambers of commerce in the state of Illinois right now. So my hope is that we make it 9. And it is something that the business community, I believe, expects and respects because, you know, in their respective industries, they have credentialing, they have accrediting. You know, I know that our local hospital is accredited in a number of areas, and that's just part of doing business, and adhering to best practices is part of being in business. And so I think this is a really fantastic way to demonstrate our leadership and our adherence to industry best practices, and there is really no better way to do that than going through the U.S. Chamber's accreditation process. I did mention, you know, that we are small, 3 full-time staff members, and you know, when it comes to accreditation, I don't think size matters. I would really encourage chambers who may be thinking, you know, we're small, we can't do this. You know, best practices apply regardless of size, and that's what this is really all about. So, and if the cost is prohibitive for you, again, Ali mentioned that there's always a voucher at the silent auction at all of the 5 institute sites across the country. That's where we actually got our fee covered, was there. I think I bought it for $350 at Midwest. So that's a great option if you do attend institute. And you can also just put it into your budget. We budgeted for the full amount to cover it. So don't let that be a deterrent to starting this work. And, you know, whether you decide to submit or not, and I, of course, encourage you to do so, I really encourage you to go through the process. Start with that self-analysis. That was, like I said, that was my gut check. And, you know, start there and figure out where you have some work to do. And there's just no better health check for your organization. This is going to ensure that you have the policies and the procedures in place, and you know, the different manuals that we all need to have. So that was again a very valuable process for us. And going through each of those domains, it demonstrates how everything that we do is so intertwined. So it's important to have that high-level, big-picture view of our own organizations as well. And I will end by saying that Ali is an incredible resource, very much willing to answer questions, even if they seem silly. I know I probably asked her a couple of humdingers, but very willing to guide you through the process. Make sure that you're building relationships, too, with your neighboring organizations in your state or a state or two over. Any of us on the webinar today, of course, would be willing to help you through the process and answer questions. But get to know the CEOs in your area through your state association or through institute. Just start by looking up the chambers of commerce that are accredited and reach out to them, because I think we're all in this together, and we all want this to be a strong profession and to have strong chambers of commerce, a big network across the country. So I will end there, and at the end, Ali, if you think I left anything out, you can sure ask me a couple of questions.
Boy, thank you so much. And actually, there was one question for you, and I'll read it here. It said, Desiree, can you please share again how long it took you to prepare your first accreditation package?
Sure. So again, I think I'm probably an outlier here, so I don't want to freak anyone out. Because we needed to get into the full audit review cycle and you know, get a lot of the policies and that kind of thing in place that we did not have, it took us longer. So I would say about 2.5 years of pretty solid work on it, just being very strategic. I created a spreadsheet that had all of the different documents that we needed, the ones that we had and needed to spruce up or update. So, and you know, of course, many of those need to be approved by the board. So, you know, timing that out and sort of setting a goal date and then working toward that, dividing up the work as best you can. And again, that's going to depend on how many how many people you have working on it. I was pretty protective of our submission, and I knew that I wanted it to be a certain way. So probably even if we had a lot of committee work and board members working on it, it would have gone through me at the end anyway, just to make sure that everything is very much streamlined and, adheres to our brand and that kind of thing. So for us, it was about 2.5 years. Now, I didn't spend 100% of my time on this. 75% of my time is typically spent on advocacy issues. So, it's not like I was working on this day in and day out, but it was always top of mind. And we did have a lot of benchmarks just organizationally for when we needed to have certain elements completed. So that was our process. And whomever submitted that question, if you want to send me an email or give me a call, I'm happy to talk through that with you, because it is different for everyone. And I know that's a really lengthy timeline for a lot of people. So it doesn't have to be that way. It just so happened that that's the way it shook out for us.
Allie?
Thanks. Sorry about that. I had myself on mute. Desiree, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that insight. And, I only see these applications from the end result. I don't see the work that goes into them. But Gary has done this several times, and maybe he can share a little bit of his insight as to how long it takes once you've gone through it one time and you renew. And I'm hoping he can also share a bit about how he's used the feedback from subsequent accreditations to really set his chamber on a path of continuous improvement.
Well, thank you very much. And for those of you who heard our colleague Desiree explain the process, if I had not done accreditation, just listening to her would certainly have inspired me to take it on. We've enjoyed being an accredited chamber since the mid-'80s, and it wasn't until the 2000 era, 2004, when we went to the STAR designation. Of course, now that we've done it 3 times and getting ready to renew, 4 to 6 months, we drive our staff considerable effort on behalf of the professional team here. It's passed off to those who are within that particular bailiwick of those 9 particular sections, and then we run it through our board. We run it through volunteers. We have a lot of eyes on the document. I would share with you the online approach compared to what it used to be in the, shall we just say, the 20th century. The 21st century approach to submit accreditation is much more streamlined, much more online, and will give you a keen sense. I'll just use maybe 3 words: room for improvement. It is still the largest room in anyone's organization, or for that matter, anyone's professional life that's in an ongoing state of renovation. For our chamber, it is a management tool. It's a leadership tool. When we finally achieved 5 stars, the chairman that year was able to sing loudly and clearly what occurred during his year as our key or chief volunteer. But I'll also tell you the 2 times that we were 4 stars, our board, I work for 44 directors on 2 different boards, the foundation and chamber board. Those 44 directors were equally excited to be 4 stars because they knew the work that went into it. I think it affirms you. It affirms your volunteers. It definitely affirms the staff. And I think the comment that Allie made and Desiree as well, and I'm sure Bill Rether is going to say the same thing. The recommendations at the end, these are still areas, unless you score a perfect score. And I think as I've been on the accreditation board, we might have had 1 or a few that have gotten perfect. But if you're slightly off, if you're nearly perfect, you still know what you have to do to improve. And as noted, if there's anything we can do to be helpful, long distance or online, we will certainly do it. And I do must and have to affirm, Allie, I think the Federation staff, the Accreditation Commission itself, when we meet 3 times a year, We're always looking for ways to refine, ways to define, and ways to encourage the myriad number of chambers to take this on. And it is a good investment. It's a return on the investment, and you'll be glad you did. Even if you start out as accredited, then you know you have something to work for in those 5-year periods. So proud to be one, proud to be part of the chamber, and thanks to ACCE, who in the 20th century and the U.S. Chamber saw fit to do this. It once again distinguishes us as chambers and certainly distinguishes our profession as chamber professionals.
Boy, how lucky are we to have you, Gary. Thank you. And that tees it up really well to our friend and colleague, Bill, who has led multiple chambers through the application process and is a real champion for the program, not only for chambers who wanted to submit, but just chambers who go through the top to bottom review of the accreditation process. Would you mind sharing some of your thoughts, Bill?
No, I don't. And first of all, let me dispel a few things that people might be afraid of. I've had chamber execs that I've known a long time that say, well, I don't want to do this because I don't want people telling me what, our board says we don't need anybody telling us what to do. And what I tried to explain to them and anybody out there listening right now is that the U.S. Chamber, they're not trying to tell you what to do. They're trying to give you a guideline into how to be better. Also, the requirements, someone mentioned it took a long time to get into the auditing, full-blown audit. Our chamber, we are 600 members here. The chambers I've been are 300 members, 1,000, 1,600 here, and we have a staff of 4, counting me, and I'm an old man, don't do much. So we talk to the chamber because in our operating budget, we keep $50,000. We keep about $500,000 in investments. Those investments are reviewed by Edward Jones and people a lot more than us, and we couldn't see spending $5,000 or $8,000 to audit $50,000. So we do a compilation. So the chambers are willing to work with you on some of these requirements so that you go, don't be afraid of them. Having said that, when I was a younger man, I went through accreditation and took a chamber through accreditation to learn some things that a young chamber exec should know. As a 44-year chamber exec, I wanted the chamber to take them through the 5-star accreditation because the first time we did it, way back there, they didn't have the different levels. You were accredited or you weren't. And so I wanted to do that because as an old man, you have to guard against going, we did that in 1952. It didn't work. It made me learn more. Also, I made absolutely sure that we had 9 committees of 3 to 5 people in each one to study every different segment of the accreditation process. Now, did they all jump in there and do that? No. If anybody been in the chamber business knows that sometimes the staff has to step in and do the work and hand out the plaque to the volunteer that didn't show up. And we had to do that. But the folks that went all the way through this process, what this chamber ended up with, besides a plaque on the wall that said 5-star accreditation, besides a chamber that has guidelines to go by on every process and every part of it, that was good. But I ended up with 15 or so volunteers that knew more about this chamber and chamber work than ever before. And the ones that weren't already on the board, we have them earmarked to be sure they get on the board because they know more about leadership. Having said that, if you start the accreditation process and you never get the plaque, when you get through trying, you'll have a better chamber because it gives you guidelines for any size chamber to follow. And our board, they talk about it. I'll be leaving. I think my replacement gets here next week. I will probably be here a little while she's moving in. But they still talk about that. And the paper said when Bill was here, this happened, but 5-star was one of them. And that builds my ego, but it also makes the board very proud. Without a doubt, completed or not completed, when you get through with the process, you will be a better Chamber of Commerce and a better executive. And I also want to add that the application fee is not due until you have finished all your pre-application stuff. So you don't send it in and then say, okay, we don't want it, we lost our money. No. By the time you get ready and they say, hey, you're ready, and you pay your money, you'll probably end up being accredited at some level.
Thanks, Bill. And yes, that kind of does tee up. Once I receive your application, it's the beginning of a process. You know, I will read your application and make sure that you're meeting all your minimums. If you don't meet your minimums, you're not going to lose your money. And then I'm going to give you some feedback, and I'll say, this is a great application. You meet all your minimums. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're submitting something that's as accurate as possible before it goes ahead and gets scored. Even if you have a number of eyes on an application, you know, typos, mistakes, things happen. I like to give the example of there was an applicant that submitted their member retention rate as 8%, and I called them and I said, I feel like this might be a mistake. If you have an 8% member retention rate, I'm not sure you're in business. And they said, oh gosh, we're so sorry. It's 88%, and that just made a lot more sense. So that's the kind of thing that I want to try to make sure that we cover before it goes forward and gets scored. And I want to help you get to the strongest and best version of yourselves before it goes and gets scored. So don't be afraid to reach out with questions. Don't be afraid to check in. This should be, you know, the beginning of a conversation, and I'm so grateful for all of your perspectives. One of the questions that I received was, how long does accreditation last, and how often is reaccreditation? So the accreditation process, accreditation lasts for 5 years. So you'll have to reapply after 5 years. Now, there are some chambers that apply early, and that's perfectly fine. There's no hard and fast rule that says you have to wait 5 years. But if you're building your budget and you're looking ahead, you should count on having the application fee every 5 years. Another question that I got for the volunteers is, what is one thing that you wish you knew going into the process? Any volunteers want to take that?
I'll chime in, and I'm sure Bill and Desiree. The part that challenged me, but is the most engaging part, is the benchmarking section. And when we went from a 4-star to a 5-star, I'm convinced that with Allie's guidance and the way she asked the right questions, the benchmarking segment that we'll be working on soon is one that I'm looking forward to. And then the other part was just to be sure that when we talked about the governmental section, you know, we do not endorse candidates. We don't have a PAC. We're a 501c6 chamber, even though we're a C3 foundation. You know, you still get into the depths of advocacy and the reason we exist to take on things that occur that get in the way of chambers doing business and business being taken care of. The governmental section was always a challenge, but I will assure you, once you get into it, once you start delving into it, it'll excite you to realize how good you are doing, and then it'll excite you to see what else you need to do to improve. But at the end of the process, I think Bill said it best. Even go ahead and submit it. You're going to achieve it. But regardless of whether you achieve it or you wait a while or it takes as long as Desiree did to get it just right the first time, it's such a great process, such a good organizational development thing, and so that the benchmarking thing I think was a challenge, but we're excited about doing it the next time.
And another question that I got from an attendee what are some best practices or suggestions when trying to educate or convince your board that this is a worthwhile endeavor? This individual has a board retreat coming up and could use some pointers as to how to sell this to their board.
Well, basically, as an old chamber exec, I've earned, most of my board members are younger than I, and they listen. And I just explained the process. A lot of them are executives, and they understand the value of laying out a plan to a measuring stick, what it is, to measure up what you are versus what the best is or what it should be. And I just explained to them how much it did for the last chamber I was in, and told them it's just something I think they needed to do, and it would educate them. And we did. We got to 4-star, and we got 4-star. I was disappointed, but I learned that we really had everything we needed to be 5-star. We just didn't report it properly. So we didn't, within a year, we just said, hey, we're going to go back and redo this. And we put up a barometer and put painted 4 of the stars gold. And every board meeting, we kept moving the barometer up and saying, okay, our goal is to paint that 5th star. And it made for good board meetings. It made for informative board members. And like I said, you come out of the process, if you use volunteers, you come out of the process with some very well-trained people. And that's a little, if I hadn't been an old chamber exec, it might be scary for young ones, because they come out of there with some really good ideas of what we need to do. And it makes you, and you should want to do this, but as a chamber exec, it makes you pay attention, because now they understand, they have a barometer, and they know enough to say, are we doing this? And I can understand it might be scary for a young person or someone just started, but I guarantee if you stick with it, you're going to come out of there with a heck of a reputation on the other end as the chamber exec that saw your board or your chamber into accreditation, and your board members are going to appreciate it, and you are too.
Thanks, and I'd like to echo, it's such a good tool. So when you get accredited, yes, you get the plaque on the wall and you get the logo, but you also get recommendations, and it's broken down to every section. Governance, we recommend this. Finance, we recommend that. Government affairs, we recommend this. And that's really a great roadmap for how to plan your next, 5 to 7 to 10 years out as an organization. So, a lot of organizations can use this process and the feedback that you get as a tool for kind of building your future. It's also a good membership tool. We use the example of a car repair shop, not a repair shop. You need to fix your car. Do you want to take it to a body shop or an accredited body shop? You want to take it to your place that has a reputation for being the best and adhering to the best standards, and everything is transparent. Your practices are efficient. Your finances are sound. So it's a great membership tool. It's a great organizational management tool. And again, it makes you really stand out in your community. And I think that's a great question, because I love to hear that you're on board, and I'm hoping to get your board on board. And also, we have regional offices around the country. And if you want somebody to come to your chamber and talk about the benefits of the program, they can do that as well. So that's an option.
I'd like to chime in real quick. I think Bill mentioned something. It is organizational. It is for your volunteers, but in the event you may not have the great fortune that some of us have in the business to remain in one chamber a while, which I have an intense gratitude that I've been able to do that. If you're in the business, it's good for your career. Sounds like Bill has done this 2 or 3 times. So you can go from a chamber with the 5-star, and that may be a thing that separates you from anyone else pursuing other larger, upwardly mobile chamber positions. So there is some professional gratification to know that you are doing that. If you also If you're looking at your board, maybe your board have offices in multiple locations. If that is your headquartered, your chairman has headquarters and he's got 5 locations, maybe one of those other chambers are accredited. So, use that tool with your other chamber and encourage your directors to touch base with chambers where they have other offices and have those chambers be part of your sales force in why you should go ahead and become an accredited chamber.
Thank you so much, Gary. There was one question. Can you walk through the steps for chambers who want to apply? Sure. So you will look at the website and refer to that minimum requirements checklist that I spoke of earlier. You really want to make sure that you, as Desiree did, you go down the list: governance, finance, government affairs, technology, communications. Can you say yes to all of those questions? Once you've decided that you can move forward in the process, you work out your timeline, you submit an intent to apply form. That's the web form that you send to me. And then you download the applications and you start plugging away at them. There's essays, there's yes/no radial buttons, there's pull-down boxes, there's short answers. And this isn't a mystery. Those things are all available on the website now. And so if you're curious, you can go take a look at those. And if you want to start with the essays, that's great. If you want to start with the yes/nos, that's great. There's no wrong way to fill out this application. So I hope that that's helpful. Has the application process changed significantly in the last few years? Yes and no. Much of the questions have remained the same. Some of the benchmarks have changed. As I said, we take a lot of time evaluating, is this a stretch? Is it too much of a stretch? Is it realistic? What are the trends? What are we seeing in applications? What are we seeing in the operations surveys? So while a lot of the questions will remain the same, we have 1 or 2 new questions or 1 or 2 differently worded questions every now and then. But more than that, it's the benchmarks that have changed, and we really strive to make sure that these questions and these benchmarks are remaining relevant in the industry. I don't think we have any more questions. Those are great questions, and I'm really grateful. As I started to say earlier, we have regional offices. We have 7 of them, and we want to help you celebrate. Accreditation is a huge, huge accomplishment. If you want someone from one of our regional offices to attend your annual dinner, a board meeting, a committee meeting, an event to deliver remarks, or help you celebrate this amazing achievement, let us know. A lot of hard work goes into this, and chambers are really, really proud of this accomplishment. Oh, I saw one more question. Do we have a regional location in Florida? Florida falls into our southeastern region, and we have an office in Georgia, but people are down in Florida all the time. I have your name, and I'll be happy to send an intro email to our office staff down in Florida. Thank you again for that question. And thank you to all of you and my volunteers for your time today. Thank you to Susan at ACCE for hosting this webinar. I so enjoy these sessions. I hope it's been informative. If you need to reach me, my contact information is on the next slide. If you want to reach out to any of our volunteers, they're on this slide. And again, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks so much, Allie, Desiree, Gary, and Bill for your presentations and for providing all of the information to our members. We really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for your questions and your interest. Just a reminder that the webinar is being recorded, and I will post a recording along with a copy of Allie's presentation on our ACCE webinar page no later than Monday. And you can find that page by clicking on Professional Development on our website, hovering over ACC University Online, and then clicking on Webinars. Our next ACC University webinar will be on Thursday, March 14th at 2 p.m. when Jamie Jolly of the Plano Chamber of Commerce will tell the story of the Plano Chamber's partnership with a longtime member to open new chamber offices and a business center offering cost-effective professional shared space for members to work, connect, and grow their businesses. Since its opening, the new chamber facility has served over 1,000 visitors and members per month and contributed to an uptick in chamber membership. So we're looking forward to learning more about that initiative when Jamie presents next time in just a couple weeks. You can register for the webinar on our ACC events page, which you can get to by clicking on professional development, hovering over events, and then navigating to and clicking on upcoming webinars. So thank you again to our panelists for presenting and everyone for your participation. Wishing everyone a great afternoon, and we will see you on our next ACC webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan.